The banking you see behind me is a part of Bajaj's R&D test track at its plant in Pune. And this is the second generation KTM RC 390. Now, I don't think I need to give you any more clues as to what we are here to do today. So let's get on with riding this motorcycle and find out what's changed and what's on offer with this new version. So like I said, this is the second generation model of the RC 390, and apart from the engine, well, everything on this motorcycle is virtually new. Even the engine, it has a changed character, and I'll come to that later. But let's concentrate on the bigger changes. Now, first of all, you'll notice that it has got a new split trellis frame. Now, this has been done. There are multiple reasons for that. First of all, it gives you better mass centralization, and apart from that, it's now a 2-unit setup. So whether it's during assembly, if this has to go for CKD markets, it's easier to pack the components, and most importantly, it will benefit you from the fact that if somehow you damage the frame, you don't have to replace the entire unit. It's split in 2 parts. So of course, if you damage this part, only this one will be replaced. So it means easier repairs. Now, apart from that, this frame is only 100 grams heavier than the previous version, but the benefits, of course, are more. Now, other than that, of course, you can also notice that it has got a new exhaust design, and this is inspired by their MotoGP machine. Well, obviously, because it has the RC badging, and KTM is doing quite well in MotoGP right now. They're not the back markers anymore. So that's about the frame and the exhaust, what you can see from here. The fairing is also all new, and the styling has taken a completely different approach. Now, this is somewhat of a controversial thing, because a lot of riders, on the internet, you'll see people are cribbing about the fact that it doesn't look as sharp and it has got this bland look at the front. But I think it grows on you. It is the sort of motorcycle that looks quirky, but it grows on you over time. And then this bubble windscreen over here, the whole bike has been tested in a tunnel, so better aerodynamic efficiency. So that's why you have a windscreen of this shape. Now, personally, I think I had the same issue. When I checked it in the pictures, I thought it looked a little odd, and it looked a little top heavy in the sense the front looked a little bulky, but in metal I think it looks quite good, and this will definitely grow on you. I especially love this matte aquatic blue shade. This again comes from their MotoGP division. It's inspired by that, and I think this motorcycle overall, the quality is also quite phenomenal. Now, coming to the changes under the skin, which are more crucial, well, this thing has lesser unsprung mass, and by that KTM has done a lot more to reduce the weight of this motorcycle. So this weighs nearly 3.5 kilograms less than the old version. Of course, that's a dry weight, but if you check the overall weight, curb weight, that is with fuel and everything, of course it's only 1 kilograms lighter, and that's down to the fact because it has a bigger tank. This tank is 13.5 liters, whereas the previous tank was 9.5 or 9.7 liters. So that's the biggest change. That's why the curb weight, if you'll notice, if you check the spec sheet, you'll compare. So this is only 1 kilograms lighter than the old bike, but overall the dry weight is down by nearly 3.5 kilograms. Now, how's that done? Of course, there are a lot of components that have been changed, including the tank itself. It is now a full metal unit, and it doesn't have a plastic cover like the old bike. The other thing is, of course, like you can see, the brakes on this motorcycle are lighter. The wheels are also of different shape, and that's not just it, because the wheels alone, they save close to 1.1 kilograms together. So these are very crucial changes. These are what make this motorcycle lightweight than before, and KTM is promising that in terms of handling, this is of course lighter, this is more agile and more friendlier bike than its predecessor. One thing that KTM couldn't stop harping on about the new model is the fact that it's more practical and more usable. And this is the feedback that they got from their existing customers. They wanted this motorcycle to be more friendly and more practical. So what they have done in that regard, if they've made a couple of changes in terms of ergonomics so that this motorcycle is more usable, it's easier to ride, and it's not as committed as the previous gen RC. So you have these bars which have been raised up now. They're not as committed, even though these are clip-on bars, so you can adjust that. You can even lower them by 10 millimeters. That's what it is. The global spec model has those bars which are lower, but for India spec they have raised the bars, so they have made it less committed on that front. The other thing is, of course, I've already talked about the tank, and it feels quite grippy. You can sit here quite comfortably, and the rider's triangle is actually quite comfortable. You don't have to really bend down to ride. You are not stressing your wrist that much. I think in that regard, a lot of riders who are not track day enthusiasts, they'll appreciate this riding position. It's more like the TVS Apache RR310, I'd say that. Now, the other thing is, of course, they have also added more padding to the seat. It doesn't feel like you're sitting on a cardboard anymore because this has a decent cushioning, and despite of that, the seat height is still 835 millimeters. So all those changes, they haven't really affected in the sense the accessibility of the motorcycle. It's still quite small, it's still quite compact, but it's not as committed as before. In terms of features and equipment, this bike is now more loaded. It has more features, of course, and the biggest of them all is, of course, this screen. It's a TFT color display. This is the same unit as the Duke 390 or the Adventure 390, but this has now finally made introduction in the RC range. So familiar unit, you get smartphone connectivity, you get Bluetooth controls, and you've also got this new switchgear with all the controls, all the buttons over here. So overall, that feels quite nice. It also comes with adjustable levers, and both for brake as well as clutch, and it also comes with a steel braided brake lining. So overall, the quality is quite good. It's not bad, but it's not great either. I think the RR310 still has a slight edge in terms of quality. Like the indicator switch over here, well, it feels a little tacky. So in terms of quality, it's not the best, of course, but it's not bad. In daily riding, I don't think you're going to notice about the quality levels, because the way this motorcycle rides, it'll keep you grinning from ear to ear, and that is the beauty of the RC390. This latest version is really phenomenal to ride on the road as well as on the track. Now, the engine might be the only familiar unit on this motorcycle, but it doesn't exactly behave how it used to. Well, of course, it has the same power output. It develops 43 bhp at 9000 rpm, and the torque is up by 1 Newton meters. So this develops around 37 Newton meters of torque at same RPM, 7000 rpm. But the way the character of the engine has actually changed. Whereas the old bike was peaky and it used to step up in terms of performance, there was that mad surge after, I say, 5000 or 6000 rpm. Well, this is more linear. It has power right from the word go, and that is based on the customer feedback. Customers demanded for a motorcycle that's more usable, like I said in the beginning, and that's what they've done. They've made the engine more usable. It's more tractable now, and the power delivery is quite linear. Of course, it's a big single, so it is punchy, it is torquey. You won't miss the thrill, but the character has sort of changed, because this no longer feels like a peaky motorcycle that has that, step in terms of performance once you crossed 5000 or 6000 rpm. This is linear all the way to the top of the rev range. Now, what this has done is that it has taken away that wild nature of the RC390. It's more tamed now, I'd say. And what used to happen with the old bike at the top of the rev range, when you're pulling high speeds, it really had that pull at the top end. But this one, it doesn't have that sort of pull. Of course, it'll do 160, 165 kilometers per hour on the speedo very easily, but you don't have that sort of rush, you don't have that sort of surge. For me personally, I prefer it. I'm not a track rider, I don't go to the track every day. This feels absolutely perfect. It's just that it doesn't have that peaky nature, and probably some riders, like some experienced riders, they might miss it. But for me, a motorcycle, it has to be tractable in all conditions, because you're going to ride this motorcycle on the road. I don't think all of us have access to a racetrack. So that's something, that peaky nature of the old motorcycle, well, that's something for the experts, for someone who is at the track all the time. But this engine, I think it's an all-rounder of sorts, and it can do everything. Now, the other important thing is the refinement, because this doesn't feel as vibey as the old bike. Today, we rode it up to speeds of 160 and above, but the vibrations from the engine, well, I think they were quite subdued, and they didn't bother me at all. So, of course, it can be a little buzzy, but I don't think it bothers you if you're wearing good quality gloves, and even if you are revving the nuts of this motor. So for me, the engine, of course, it has changed, but it is still a very powerful, a very potent, and a very punchy motor. The RC390 is also equipped with a bi-directional quick shifter, and it works well for the most part. But at times it can be a bit jerky, especially during aggressive downshifts. Well, in terms of ride and handling, we only rode the motorcycle at the track, and I got 30 minutes of session where I could just absolutely push the motorcycle. And I think it felt just as good as the old KTM. It was known to be a potent track tool, and that's what this is. It feels lighter, and I think in terms of stability, especially mid-corner, I think this feels more planted. It has more mid-corner stability. And this is the sort of motorcycle that reminds me of the first gen R15. See, the previous gen RC 390 was a bit of a wild child, but this one is a very friendly motorcycle. You can do anything. The electronics on this are brilliant. It comes with traction control, but it's not intrusive. Similarly, the brakes are phenomenal now. They've changed the brakes. The old RC brakes, they used to fade, but this has great bite, and I think the tires are also quite good. So in terms of riding, in terms of how agile it is, I don't think you'll find any difference because this is just as agile, but it feels friendlier, it doesn't feel twitchy, and it doesn't feel like something that's going to bite you off if you do a mistake. This feels a lot more friendlier to ride. You can do crazy lean angles, you can push the motorcycle, you can do stuff, you can change your line mid-corner, and it feels stable all the time. So I think for me, this is the biggest change in terms of character, because this motorcycle definitely has got that thing. It is a typical RC, but it's not as wild as before, and I think on the road you'll definitely appreciate this aspect.
The rubber on the RC is still made by Metzeler, but it isn't the grippy W-rated compound anymore. Instead, these ones are H-rated tires. For most riders, these tires will do the job just fine. But if you're more of a track rider and are always at the limit of adhesion, well then you'll be left wanting more from the stock Metzelers.
And with this all new version, well, KTM has fixed those issues, and it is a more rounded package. It is an all-rounder of sorts, but on the road it kind of suffered. The only problem with this motorcycle, of course, it has a lot more power, but it is a little too expensive now, because this one is priced at 3.14 lakh, and that makes it around 35,000 rupees dearer than the previous RC, which was not a cheap bike either. And more importantly, it makes it nearly 50,000 more than the RR310. So on the road, of course, I have to ride both the motorcycles back to back, because when I rode the RR310, I thought it was the perfect motorcycle for the road. But this one now, it will give the RR310 a run for its money, because this has more power, and this on the track, I think it's as good as ever. So overall, I think the only problem with this motorcycle that I see is the pricing, and of course it has lost a little bit of KTM DNA, because it is a little calmed down. It's not really a docile motorcycle, but it is calmer than before. It has evolved into a motorcycle that's more mature now. So it works both ways, but I think my final verdict will obviously depend when I ride this motorcycle back to back with the RR310, because that's also a great motorcycle. And more importantly, next month we'll have BMW's version of the Apache RR310, which is going to be called the G310RR, and I think that motorcycle, well, of course, it will create more excitement in this segment, and you'll be spoiled for choice. You'll have the RR310, you'll have this bike, and then you'll also have the BMW version, which is going to be the same, but then it gets you into that BMW ecosystem. It is a BMW branded product. So I think you're spoiled for choice. Right now I can't make a decision. I think I have to ride all the bikes back to come to a concrete conclusion. But overall, I think the RC now is not just a one-dimensional motorcycle as it used to be. It is a more complete motorcycle. Of course, it's pricey, but then you get your money's worth in terms of the equipment, in terms of the design, and how this motorcycle rides. Because like I said, it is a mini sports bike, and it feels every bit as premium as any KTM or any big bike feels. So for me, that's the real draw of the KTM RC 390. And yeah, hoping to ride it back to back with its main rivals very soon, so that we can give you a proper verdict on which motorcycle to buy, because right now I'm myself very confused.